Welcome to the Belly to Belly podcast, where we explore in-person business-to-business marketing. This episode is brought to you by Meet, the company that helps international companies exhibit at U.S. trade shows. Check them out at meetroi.com. Well, hi, and welcome to the next episode of Belly to Belly. So we're here today to talk about online or in-person, developing your 2021 event participation plan. I'm joined by Kelly Kenny, who's going to help us kind of navigate this because we're kind of in an untested area here. Early in the year, we lost the ability to go to in-person events. We're now coming back to the place where there's some light at the end of the tunnel. We can move maybe back to going to in-person events at some point in 2021. We really don't know exactly when yet or how, but we want to begin thinking about what that might look like and begin building the strategies to do that. So welcome, Kelly.
It's great to be here, Bill.
It's just fantastic. So let's talk about your expectations. What do you see in terms of the availability of in-person events as you look into 2021?
Well, as you said, lights at the end of the tunnel, vaccines are coming out, and I think the world's going to start back up in 2021. I think that the virtual world is here to stay, and everybody should keep a blended strategy moving because it is really got some unique attributes to it that I don't think event hosts are going to get rid of. So a blended strategy, and as far as in-person and virtual, or however they're calling them today, because I've heard several different nomenclatures, but I really think by mid-year-ish, we're going to get to a place where live and in-person events are going to start happening again, and people are going to be able to get back into the game.
Fantastic. So, and I think you're kind of leading us into a great place. So maybe we'll come back to, which is the idea of that integrated approach to, sort of how do we build that integrated plan. But before we go there, so when you look at the idea of next year, the way things might open, how do you see sort of the reopening? Because, there seems like there are a bunch of different ways for us to look at it, smaller events versus larger, it may be local and versus regional versus national. How do you see events, based on what you're seeing in the market, how do you see events opening up? Is it going to be based on our ability to go to these events? Will it be based sort of regionally by size? What will be the sort of the way you see it opening?
Well, if I look into my crystal ball,
no, please.
I really have the answer here. No, I guess my thought is it's going to be more strategic, smaller, and then they're going to grow. I see past June, some of the larger shows are already putting inklings out that they're going to be in person. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I see things as happening in smaller bits, and maybe a little more regional. People will get back into flying and doing those types of things to attend. But I really see it as the numbers are going to expand, and I think it'll be a hybrid. You can send a person or two in person, and you can have 2 or 3 people virtual, and you can attack an event both ways for quite some time, as well as leaning more into larger events and more situational and condensed volumes as we get to year end.
So what you're saying is, in terms of blended, some of those national and sort of global events that normally have 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 people might have a blended strategy, as you say, where they allow a smaller number of people to attend in person and an unlimited number really to attend online. Is kind of the blended idea?
Absolutely. And by the way, it's really great if you can take a look at some of those shows, and even if you can't make it in person, to attend and interact with those, you're going to see so much more in the virtual world and have access to people who you never would have accidentally bumped into at a large show. And because of the tools, and if you're really savvy at how you interact with them, you're going to find some unique views and opportunities to connect with people you never would have met at a global or 100,000 person show. So have your game strategy and plan and execution ready, and you can actually like leapfrog ahead of others, even when that's 20 people in person and 100, or 20,000 people and 100,000 people virtually. So watch it, how it works. If you're ahead of the game, you're going to do well this year.
Oh, this is really good information. So, this whole process of sort of transitioning to normal or the new normal, and in terms of going from online to in person or some combination thereof, how would you suggest that companies navigate this process of sort of building back to in person?
Well, I'm a fan of both opportunities right now. I really think, especially because the virtual world has given us a unique opportunity to attend shows we wouldn't have done in the past. I mean, it's so efficient. It's fabulous. Number two, you can test, as you always should, but it's so much easier in a virtual setting. So looking at different shows, integrating the hybrid and the in-person, but having your testing, I would say, a little more weighted towards the virtual because it's easier. But as you're stepping back in, having tested it in a virtual market and then try it in person and see what that leap looks like. And early first few shows, everybody's going to be testing a lot. So this is the time. Like, you're not going to look silly or look like you're being a chameleon because all of a sudden, in the morning you look like this and in the afternoon your messaging's totally different. Great, do it. This is the time to actually leap in and take advantage of the blend. So I see the shows transitioning back, but how you negotiate, what you're looking for, and how you're messaging at each show's got to be specific.
Got it. So when you're saying testing, you mean A/B testing. So we've got a certain buyer persona we're aiming at, and we're testing whether it's our call to action, or our value proposition, but various communications we're testing and seeing response. Yeah, cool. And so you mentioned negotiating, which is always an interesting thing. So before we go specifically to negotiating, thinking about the online events, you talked about their efficiency. What are we are seeing some challenges that as you've said, that online events are likely here to stay because they present quite a few opportunities. We have recently learned, though, some fairly big challenges that exhibitors are having, particularly exhibitors are having at online events. And one that comes to mind that has been dramatic is this assurance of traffic, right? So the online event has 40,000 people, but nobody goes to the booth because there's no strategy for that. This kind of leads into negotiating as well. But what are some of the things that we want to make sure people know to ask as they're sort of participating or looking to participate as an exhibitor in an event? What are some of the questions that should be asked of the event organizer? Right.
So number one, you want to know their technology. You really need to know, and what's the visibility, what displays, what are the attributes of the technology, and what can I bring to my booth, as well as how are you bringing people to me? So let me see the technology. Let me see the integration. Do you have any stats? Because every show, all these virtual shows, which is a huge benefit, is not in person. You don't get a card for every person that comes in your booth, but in a virtual world, you do. You get their credentials, you get their contact dependent on show, but in a lot of them, you see how many people you touched, and then you see within your booth what they've engaged with. So you want to see representation of what they've done with other shows, what access people have to your materials, and how they're drawing it in. So how's the agenda line up? What are the time slots for people to be in the exhibit area? What's conflicting with that? How's the layout? Do you have a floor layout? So can I go to specific sections of the floor like I would in person? I get a map and I go, oh, these are hardware. I'm more interested in services. I'm going to angle down this line and spend more time with all these exhibitors. Well, in a virtual world, if it's A to Z, and that's how the listing is, it's hard to differentiate. Yes, there's search tools. Yes, there's tagging, but you really want to see how they lay out the floor, how the visual representation of that is, and how to engage. So how is exhibiting? What are the stats that you're going to get? What's the technology that you're going to be engaged with? What are the assets that you can bring? What's the frequency that I can trade it out? Can I trade it out? And what's the data behind it? So what am I getting end of show or immediate? Some of them you can see as somebody's in your booth what they're touching and how that works. So you need to know, like, how engaged can I be? Can I take them to a one-on-one conversation? Is it only chat? Mm-hmm. So learning all those little nuanced things, each element brings in a different value, and how good you are at leveraging them brings a different result.
Got it. And so when you talk about trading out, there was something you had talked about. What was it that you would trade out? That wasn't totally clear to me. Trade
out? I don't understand your question.
Oh, I thought you had said that you would want to trade something out
in your booth. Yeah, so I was talking about trading out assets. So maybe in the morning, your booth is more focused towards one type of persona because the activity in the event is going to have different people flowing through at different times. You can actually see. And so maybe your morning session is more towards CISOs and you're targeting these people. And then the afternoon, it's more the finance team. Because of their engagement in the conference, you're going to know the likelihood of their engagement over time. So you want to trade out the assets in your booth. So you have a sizzle reel that's more towards security and technology. And in the afternoon, you're going to put the one in that's more towards finance team. So you want to assess, based on the agenda and the flow of the event, which assets you should and which call to action you should have during which times of the day. And so you kind of have to guess and leverage the knowledge of your host. I can't say this enough. Like, they know what's going to be going on and you're guessing. Get involved with them, have them mark out the tempo of the day so that you can adjust accordingly within your booth.
So, but fundamentally from a negotiation standpoint, you want to make sure that your booth, once you set it up, is editable, or that you can add and take away various messages and assets, so that whether you're testing or you're sort of continuing to augment and learn as you go through the event, because some of these shows are 2, 3, 4, 5 days long. So the idea that you could morph each day would be part of what you're talking about as well. Yes. And some shows actually change audience as they progress through each day. So let's talk about negotiating. So when you're talking to a host of an event, an expo or a virtual event, what are some of the things that are different that you need to make sure you talk to them about that you wouldn't even have considered when or maybe you would have considered, but it's less so maybe than when you're in person, because you've been to this event 6 or 7 times. You already know these things, but that you can't rely on anymore because you're in person. What would be some of the things that we want to help people understand to negotiate?
Well, we're always audience focused. So we're looking at who's the audience in this event. And to some degree, you want to know how will this audience be different than what you have had in the past? What is the makeup of the audience? So you're looking at, when you're negotiating in your deal, who's going to be in person and or who's virtual? How many is an interesting and difficult to assess are going to attend, and then how many are necessarily going to come into the exhibit area? Because I've even talked to some organizers where they say, well, we have 40,000 people. And I'm like, yeah, but only 300 came to the booths. So you want to get data, and they have it. So you really have to ask for specific data about engagement. Where is it? Is it in your networking things? Can you throw in extra things that I could do? Like, can I host a Q&A in my booth? Can I do it in a roundtable setting? So what other elements are available? what is the volume of people you anticipate? And then if this is the volume you anticipate and I only get 20%, does my cost adjust that way? Mm-hmm. So there are many little layers of things. And what you're always looking for is, how do I get the ROI out of this event? If I'm going to spend this with the expectation of these elements, make sure you know what those elements are and try to quantify it. Everybody is in unknowns right now, so they may not have the specific element that you're looking for, but if you don't ask, you don't know. And so you really have to look at those specific elements and start trying to quantify what makes a great show. You know, it isn't just how many people came in and touched something in my booth. It's how many people did I talk to? How many secondary meetings did I have? Mm-hmm. How many, Zoom one-on-one meetings? How many follow-up appointments? How many, so all those elements, you want to see if you can negotiate that in.
Well, I really like what you said about the idea of sort of, we're all in unknown territory. And the goal here in negotiating isn't to necessarily put the host or the organizer of the events at a disadvantage. It's really to say, you don't know, and I appreciate you're giving me the marketing, sort of position here, but there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know how many people are going to show up. We don't know how many people are going to attend the booths. This is all sort of new territory. So,
can I just jump in before your next question? I want to add in one more point to that, because they don't know. But what's really interesting is you turn the table around and say, how can I make this a better event for you? Meaning, ask the event host, what would make this a great event? And what I found in some of those conversations is, hey, we need to get this type of person participating. We need to do this or that. And I've offered to help them expose my network to this opportunity. And in exchange, they can get me access tickets for the people I'm inviting. They can get me things that are value add to my client base who may not have thought about attending this show, but it's a great way for me to engage my client base to say, hey, there's this really unique show. I can get you a back access pass. Would you be interested? And everybody wins. I win because I gave them the opportunity. My client wins because they get to go to the show. The show gets a new and unique participant that they hadn't gotten. So try to get creative, and but put yourself in their shoes while you're negotiating and help them, because you'll win and your customers will win. So try to find new elements. Got
it. Well, it's that idea of aligned self-interest, right?
Yes.
Is that the thinking about exhibiting, and so I would imagine for anyone that's exhibiting, the number one thing that, or number one and number two things that concern you are how many people will visit my booth and who are they? I mean, it's sort of quality and quantity, both are important. So again, thinking specifically as an exhibitor, is that maybe the first place that you want to have, number one is understand what's your plan to drive traffic to my booth or the booths or the exhibit area, and what kind of interaction can I expect? But then two is, that's great. It's super to hear that you have this plan and these are your expectations. What do we do if that doesn't happen? And so, one of the things that, as you were talking, just, I thought about a little bit, and maybe you have a thought on this is, probably most people in the trade show arena today are cash strapped. They've sort of hemorrhaged through a year. They're trying to figure out how to cobble together enough business so that they can, sort of make it back to a more, a time that's better economically. And I wonder if a strategy that they would be more amenable to and easier, and I know you've done this in some cases, is to say, we need to be protected. We don't want to take any money out of your pocket, but we'll pay this rate with these sort of assurances. And if you don't need it, what if you just gave us sort of the same sort of booth and the same sort of package here? Again, if you don't hit these thresholds at the next in-person event. So we hope you're successful. We want to meet our prospects now, and we want to help and support you now. But let's, when we hope it doesn't happen, but if that doesn't, happen, can we, sort of get the same deal, or essentially get the same benefit at your next in-person event? Is that a strategy that you've seen work?
Absolutely. And it really is the play it forward, not pay it forward. So we want to play in the future with you. We are in with you, and we know that this is a great event and a great show. So we want to participate, but the skin in the game for me is I'm paying you this year and may not get the result that I'm looking for. And if I don't, I need an opportunity future. And that has been a good lever. And they tend to do that more so than I need an absolute guarantee, because nobody has one, and it's really hard to get that. So we have had a very few negotiated deals where there was a out clause and you had to state so far in advance that you're not going to participate, and they would give you a full refund or partial based through on your timing. But those are few and far between. So having it stated up front, instead of waiting till the event and it's a flop and then going to them, they are toast. They have no resources at that point. They've expended everything, and they're not negotiating what you want. So.
Yeah, well, and we can all, at this point, we can anticipate that there are going to be some hiccups. So,
yep.
So the next question is around, and we don't know what, when we've sort of gotten back to normal or the new normal, but so this may be 12, it may be 24, maybe 36 months out, and we've transitioned to sort of a post-COVID world, sort of the new normal. How do companies strike the right balance between online and in person? So now we're back, and we can attend 100% in person. If that day comes, I don't know what's available for virtual. There undoubtedly will be some, because we've seen with many organizations, they've seen not just interest but efficiencies with this. But how does an organization make the decision between what it will do or should do in terms of going in person versus virtual? And I'm sure there's going to be some differences between organizations and what the right plan might be based on who they're targeting and so on. But what are some sort of general thoughts you have on this topic?
Well, there are very specific things that virtual brings to the table that I hope don't go away. Especially just from sitting in an audience in a virtual event is, to me, better. Number one, you can hear and you can see the speaker, and then you can hear and see what everybody's thinking. I mean, some of the shows in the chat alone, I get more competitive intelligence. I see who the subject matter experts are. I know who I want to connect with. I mean, it is a whole strategy in itself just to sit in an audience and be an active participant that we haven't seen. You would never do that in person. So, the elements of virtual, I think, are amazing what you can do. And the in-person strategy, there is no replacing in-person connection, and the randomness and the great human connection. Oh my God, I miss it so much. Of just shaking somebody's hand, looking them in the eye, building the rapport and trust that you can't do. So I can't wait to get back to in-person, but I so value the virtual. And so looking at a company strategy has to have both, at least through 2022. And I would even suggest that forever, there will be an element of virtual, from a competitive intelligence, from a testing, from an efficiency of cost and execution, to ramping up your sales team and your marketing team. Like, how do they get better? Throw them in a couple of virtual events, get their chops around how to communicate, and then throw them into the real world. I mean, there's so many uses of virtual that we hadn't even thought of, that we're now like tricking out every day. You're playing with how a new element of a show that you could do better. And so I'm just saying, no, ultimately, what's your growth target? Like, if you say our company has to grow by 11%, then what were the results in your virtual this year? What were the results of your in-person the year before? Start building the matrix value of what a show can bring to you in each element, and then run it across a year to see where you don't want to have too many leads in, June and none in July, because I'm sorry, the world still functions in July. We still have to work. So consistent flow, variation of events, and then use it as, virtual as maybe the canary out there in the new market testing, and doing some of this from a science as well as in person. Can't wait to get their strategy. I think it's going to be blended. And as an organization, know where you want to get to and know what each component, meaning virtual and in person, brings to the table, and run that math to get to your ultimate exact equation. Does that answer what you're looking for?
Well, so what I hear you saying is that we want to first start with what outcomes do we want? Yes. What flow of prospects, of high quality prospects, do we need? How many a month? How many? What's the flow? And obviously not having peaks, big peaks and valleys through the year, but we have more of a steady flow, and really looking at the integration of in-person and online to manage that flow of high quality prospects. And I love what you said about using online to get new people prepared and new people into the game, help them prepare their skills and train a bit. The one other place that we've seen, and I'd love your reaction to this, some effectiveness in online is, as you look at the events that you're prioritizing through the course of the year, we've seen where we look at some as sort of A events. Those are the ones 100% we're going to in person. There's, whether it's the audience, the proximity, the quality, quantity, what it means in the industry, sort of a competitive intelligence component, any of those things. But these are ones we're going to go to in person. And then there's the B events that were, before the online events. These are the ones you only went to, maybe you walked through, but you went to a much, much smaller budget, a much, much smaller team. Maybe one person goes and walks through, or a couple of people go. Maybe you do a hospitality event or something to engage some portion of the audience, but a much smaller presence. Is what you're saying that you might use the B or maybe even B and C events to cherry pick doing some of those, maybe because they're a lot further away, a much higher cost. Maybe they overlap or conflict with another event in some way, but you'd use those to access audiences you may not have accessed otherwise, just because of the efficiency afforded by online as well. Is that part of it? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, how many times have we mapped out a strategy for a year, and then we go, well, we got 3 events that happen to be land, like one day you have one event that starts on one day, and then you have 2 events that overlap in the center and one day on the other end. And you're like, you can't do them all. And you could either do 2 poorly or attend one and do the other 2 virtual, and divide up your team, leverage those events, really focus in on those. I think we can all do events better. And I am a huge advocate of fewer better. And let's get the results and follow up. Guys, even in the virtual world, you got to follow up. I am astonished at how many events I have been to this year, and I have not received one follow-up. How many booths have I visited, and I have not received an event follow-up? Pardon me, the reason you do this is to connect. And if you don't follow up, you just wasted your time, your resources, and make me crazy. Because this is absolutely like my biggest pet peeve in the world, and it exists in virtual and it exists in person. And please follow up. You will so differentiate yourself. I guarantee you, even if that person doesn't want your product, they will think better and more highly of you and maybe refer somebody to you. So please follow up.
Well said. Yeah. Follow up is the rule, right? So, well, this has been fascinating. I think we started with the sort of idea of, for the next 12, 24 months, we are absolutely transitioning to, a place where we're back to a normal, back to when we want to, we can we can travel when we want to. We can go to in-person events and so on. And exactly what the timeline is, and whether we're restricted sort of to travel nationally for a period of time before we can travel internationally. I think there are a variety of things that still remain to be seen. But really thinking now about how to get that plan in place. So, we went into this year sort of thinking we had it figured out. We knew what to do. We clearly learned that that's not the case. That we need to continue to have processes that are flexible. How often should you revisit as you're going into 2021? We're going to build a plan. Each of us is going to start the year with our plan. But how often should we revisit that plan, Kelly?
Oh my gosh. Well, in this immediate world, it's almost weekly, but that's not viable. So I would say certainly quarterly. And if you had a little quick snapshot once a month as to where are we, what's next, what's in line, what's missing, because the what's missing piece is the part that a lot of folks, once they get their plan, they kind of go like, we're done, we've planned. But there's so many pop-ups, and especially this year, there's going to be a lot of invite only. There's going to be some unique gathering type opportunities. There's going to be some content that you just would be wowed by. I would secure the events that you want to, the bigger type opportunities, but then be on the lookout at least monthly for those unique pop-up events that are going to happen this year. Again, that they happen this year and they happen in 2021, they are going to be out there that you're not going to see unless you're frequently looking at it. So,
well, and yeah, I mean, thinking about this too is there's a danger in looking too often, as we've seen with clients. Well, is that you tend to have the lazy Susan approach. And so the important thing here in building an event strategy, from what we've learned, is that you want to be careful not to make event-based decisions. You want to make prospects or business development-based decisions. And so always aligning your decisions in terms of event participation to the outcomes you want from a business development standpoint, in terms of the flow of new prospects and closed business and so on, and to be careful not to make it, as we've seen, not to make it event-based. In other words, this is really cool, something event that we can take part in, and quite often it's, what email did you receive today is sort of becomes the event decision priority, as opposed to the actual pipeline of prospects that we want to develop. So there's a balance in this that you want to strike.
Absolute great catch. And I can't tell you how many, like, hey, here's an event, and some executive gets the email and says, wow, this looks really cool, and my friend Bob's going, so let's go. And that is not the way to make a decision about any event. So stop, but realize we are in a dynamic environment, and opportunities are popping up. And I would also say to make sure you have an inventory of team and know their skill set and kind of their availability and what they're good at. So look post-event at each event that you've participated in and see, and by the way, virtual, you can see who attended, who was there, how long were there, how many they engaged, how many meetings did they have? I mean, all that data, instead of just, I was at this segment of the conference, I'm sorry I missed you. No, who actually participated, who actually executed, and how many appointments and things did they follow up on? Get that data and use that as you're planning to help make sure you got the right team heading to the right events in the right mix.
Perfect. Well, this has been delightful. I think we've covered a lot of really good ground. Any closing words at all, Kelly, in terms of getting pumped up for 2021?
I am pumped. I am so excited to get back to seeing people. And, I can't think June is going to be here soon enough for me, but I value the additive nature of virtual and encourage, if you haven't figured it out, email us, call us. I'm happy to share, because we have learned so much this year, and it is really exciting to see. And I think there's a place for both going forward. And I think 2021 is just going to be ramp and roll as you go. Everybody's got the rough and tumble game face on, and it's going to be awesome. So good luck, everybody.
Awesome. Well, here's wishing you all a great new year and much success in 2021. And as Kelly said, please give us a jingle if we can help in any way or you have questions. We're certainly happy to kibitz with anybody and certainly wish you all well and that you are it's a very successful year for you. So thanks so much, and we'll see you. Thank you for joining us on today's podcast. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or we can be of any service. Like us if you'd like to stay in the know on current episodes.